Hey everybody, and welcome to our final Souls series on this channel. For our last series, I wanted to do something a bit more broad, and I think it'll be a great exercise to talk about the 10 things I love most about the games in the series and the 10 things I loved the least. Originally, I was going to do singular reviews and a ranking, but I want to move beyond comparing what's better than what in the series and instead focus on what's done well and what's not. I'll be really interested to see what your favorite and least favorite parts of the games are, so be sure to sound off in the comments. Today we'll be starting things with Demon Souls. Kicking things off at number 1, a perfect hub world. The Nexus to me is one of the best examples I can think of a hub world in any game. There's a talented blacksmith for all your smithing needs, a heartwarming chap that is sworn to carry your burdens, magicians to offer spells and miracles, a waifu to assist you in leveling and feel like a companion that shares in the way to your mission, and as you play throughout the game, NPCs from the world seek haven here, adding more and more character as you progress. Then there's the sheer beauty of it. The Nexus is absolutely gorgeous, massive in scale, and has a few neat secrets for you to explore. I love the expanded tutorial area that you can find for extra tips on the game's complexities, and in such a complex game, it's nice that the archstones are so straightforward. The Nexus is most memorable though for me for being a true breath of relief from the demonic possession of Latria. The comforting music and warmth of the environment are truly unforgettable. Number 2, varied level design. Levels in Demon Souls can easily be split between the 5 archstones, and each of these worlds feels completely unique in terms of aesthetic design, enemy variety, and even difficulty. In terms of difficulty, probably my favorite aspect of the design is that as you progress through each world, the subsequent portions rise in difficulty, which encourages the player to attempt and explore the other archstones first before proceeding. At the same time, a veteran player of high skill can use this design to their advantage to access items that wouldn't otherwise be obtainable for a novice until the late game by blowing through one of the worlds. Finally, I really enjoy the levels in Demon Souls because they don't take a backseat to the bosses. In fact, I'd argue that the game's areas are largely more difficult than most of the bosses at their end. Of course, I've talked about the bosses plenty, but I do love that they're the glue that holds the pieces of the world together. And at number 3, we've got thick atmosphere. The final piece of world building that makes Demon Souls such a memorable game is the atmosphere. I've never been able to easily put my finger on just what makes the game stick out so much in this category, but I'll try to nail it down for you. One thing I love is the ethereal nature of the soul form. Much of Demon Souls is very dark and threatening, and the blue beacons of a friendly soul is great comfort, while the red glow of a dark soul is appropriately foreboding. Another is the echoed voices. I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but the way the voice acting in the game resonates gives it an almost dreamlike vibe that sucks me into the fantasy of Latria.
You may be a great demon hunter, but I fear you may not be ready. Beware the limits of your own power.
There's also no way I can deny the difficulty of the game adds a harsh oppression to your psyche where you feel on guard and like death might be around any corner. It's not a horror game, but it certainly can be terrifying. Bringing us to number 4, the pressure of world tendency. In talking about the game's knack for putting you between a rock and a hard place, there's the balance of world tendency to think about. While world tendency certainly is confusing at times, there is a simple concept about it. In pure black world tendency, the enemies of a given world have greater HP, damage, and defense, and even your own HP and soul form is lower, which you'll likely be stuck in because the game is harder, but they do drop more upgrade items. Whereas in pure white, they barely drop any items, but you'll have increased damage while the enemy's HP, damage, and defenses are all lowered, plus they drop more healing items. The only downside is less upgrade materials. Now this should sound like a no-brainer. Well, of course I want white world tendency. Well, here's the catch. Your damage output is only higher in soul form, and in soul form you only have 50% of your HP. Well, fine, I'll just give up the damage and stay in human form. Here's where the dilemma comes in. World tendency can only be shifted to white by killing bosses or a very small amount of unique enemies that only appear once a playthrough. You could also kill an invading player, but that's not very likely these days. Okay, then I'll just avoid shifting it to black tendency. Easier said than done, I'm afraid, because the main way the world shifts to black tendency is by dying in human form. Here's where the full picture comes in. You as the player get the choice between sticking to soul form outside the Nexus and never worrying about your world shifting to black as you play, but you have to have your HP halved the entire time. Or you can risk it in human form with full HP and potentially send yourself spiraling into black for an entire playthrough. A veteran can likely play in human form just fine, but a new player will likely be forced to make this tough choice or learn the hard way. If there are any new players out there still watching, get the Cling Ring in 1-1. It makes your HP and soul form 70% and makes the decision a hell of a lot easier. Even so, I love the dark dilemma the world tendency forces on the player. And number 5, character tendency. Because world tendency wasn't enough, there's also character tendency, and I love it from the perspective of the game's deciding moral compass. If you kill the world's friendly NPCs for personal gain or out of malice, suffer the consequences as your character's tendency fades to black and your soul form HP is reduced reduced by up to 5%. If you rid the world of black phantoms, then you're rewarded with white character tendency, offering you increased damage. As you can see, this offers further complex choices for the player to maximize their damage or sacrifice a bit of HP for cruelty and wealth. Number 6, Stockpile Thomas. When talking about NPC murder, it's hard to not have Stockpile Thomas come to mind, and not because I want to murder him. I've covered Thomas in my top 10 waifus video, so give that a look for more endearing Souls NPCs, but to summarize it here briefly, he embodies every bit of warmth I reference when discussing the Nexus.
You have a heart of gold. Don't let them take it from you.
Plus he carries all your shit, which is pretty damn important in this game due to the carry weight. Number 7, a rewarding tutorial. Before I even talk about the tutorial itself, I have to praise Demon's Souls for making the tutorial optional. It's pretty bare bones and wouldn't offer much to an experienced player. That is, unless you're up to the challenge of killing Vanguard at the end. Certainly not the easiest thing in the world to do, killing a boss at base stats will open up a brief bit of the world for you. The primary reason I love it so much is because it's one of the optional yet direct rewards for your skill in the game. Make it through the fight and you're rewarded with early access to Vanguard's Demon Soul, a few other small souls, some healing items, and even an upgrade stone or two. A nice little set for the player to progress forward on their journey with, that is before they get pounded into oblivion by the Dragon God to remind them that this is Demon Souls. If only the actual boss was that awesome. Well, my number 8 choice is awesome and it's minimal fall damage. That was the best segue I could come up with. It's hilarious and awesome how little damage you take from falls in this game. It's almost like you're a weighted balloon when you drop. There's this slow dramatic effect that is all the more appreciated when you realize you can fall from absurd heights with minimal cost. Nothing too significant, but you gotta appreciate the little things sometimes. And my number 9 choice, no pause feature, is not so insignificant. Something of a hot debate when Demon's Souls was new was the inability to pause the game. Bruh, I gotta take a piss, what do you expect me to do, just hold it? No, but really, there is a way to pause the game. Quit out. Yep, that'll save the game for you right there, which to me was pretty damn revolutionary at the time. Most games won't let you pick up and play from exactly where you left off. This is an amazing feature that I'd love to see more games to this day include rather than checkpoints. The trade-off is that you can't pause, but that's completely intentional. The developers clearly didn't want you to have the ability to pause and prepare for being out of position, or even worse, just pause and quit. Not that Soul speedrunners don't do that to save their skin all the damn time or anything. And my final choice at number 10, and probably the most significant, is the concept. Yeah, maybe a broad topic, but when it comes down to it, I have to appreciate Demon's Souls for creating what's now known as the Souls-like genre. There's a massive number of things I love about this style of game as a whole, but I'll highlight the 3 that come to mind the most. First, it's all about the bosses. Come on, it's me. Did you really think I wouldn't lump in some boss praise? Yeah, I love bosses in games, and I'm a huge fan of how they incorporated bosses as the aforementioned glue. It's like one final skill check before you're allowed to go forward. Second, this started the genre that has an amazing knack for making brutal challenges feel fair to the player. Sure, there's some unfair gags here and there, and every now and again you'll experience a bit of bullshit, but on the whole the experience largely makes you feel at fault whenever you die. You made the mistake, not the game. The rules are set from the get-go and you'll have to learn to overcome them. And that leads us to my third and favorite part. This makes the challenge massively rewarding. Deaths are a means to an end in Demon's Souls. This entire genre was a series that made me realize deaths in games aren't a failure, but a path to your success. Every death teaches you something about the game, and because it's nearly always fair, it makes you feel good to be endlessly punished and all the more amazing when you overcome whatever held you back. I think everyone has experienced the Souls euphoria at some point or another. It's personally what got me into speedrunning these games. I wanted more of that sweet feeling you get when you overcome an insurmountable challenge. And even without creating self-imposed challenges, the game on its own offers rewarding gameplay in droves. And with that, I've said every bit of praise I've got for Demon's Souls today. Next time I'm going to be taking out my baseball bat because it's time to bash on what the game could do a bit better. I hope you all join me then, and I want to thank you for being here with me today. Be sure to check me out on Twitter for video updates and more, and give me a look on Twitch where I speedrun games live. Much love to you all, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.